All right, let's do this. These guys set the bar really high. And these words will make perfect sense by the end of this presentation. In early 2015, our company got this brief. Make marketing materials for a TV sci-fi thriller set in the 80s that bring back the 80s in a truly authentic way. That's all the information we were given. It was the vaguest brief in briefing history. We knew it was a really big opportunity. We knew it was a really high-profile show, and we knew it was a big network, so much so that we could not push back on them to try to get more information. This is all we had to go on, and we really wanted to nail this. If you were in our situation, think about it for a second. What would you do? How would you approach this? This is your tentpole opportunity for your company for that year. Would you just jump in, start sketching and designing, concepting and whiteboarding? Go into your ideation chamber? Would you start with researching, perhaps? And if you did start with researching, what would you research? The 80s? How do you do that? Do you Google image the 80s? Well, up until that day, those are all things we would have done. What was different about this time is we did none of those. So what did we do? Well, instead of starting to create and design visual elements, which is our first inclination, we thought about who we were making these marketing materials for. And we gathered data about who might be receiving these marketing materials. And it was our first time using data to understand our audience before we started sketching and designing. And from that moment on, it transformed our approach to solving briefs and brand challenges and our creativity as a whole. And you all know what artificial intelligence is. Our company had just put into alpha testing an AI audience data tool called Contender. And we decided to use it to solve the VB, the vague brief. We wanted to know about our audience's demographics, obviously, but more than that, what are they about? What are they into? What do they care about? What's important to them? The AI analyzed their online behavior and their social chatter, and the results turned out to be explosively spot on. We instructed the tool to explore popular topics from the decade, and one of them happened to be classic 80s movies. Some of you remember these. These were very formative, important movies for me, The Outsiders and The Breakfast Club. And the data tool showed us that audiences having conversations about these films online were also very passionate about horror and fantasy and sci-fi stories. Now, I personally would not have seen that connection because I was really into these movies, but I was way too chicken to be into horror movies. So the AI was pointing us there, and also this was one little shred of a clue we had in the VB, was that this was a thriller, sci-fi, fantasy story. So already a circuitous and unexpected way to get a clue, we kept digging. A layer down, the AI told us that these people were passionate about the teen movies that brought those genres together, like Goonies and Labyrinth. Okay, we kind of felt like that was a helpful reference. We kept digging. And the AI told us stuff like, this audience is into collecting posters, like vintage 80s posters. Remember your bedroom in the 80s, like E.T. posters? And it also uncovered Stephen King's influence in the types of books and films that they like. So our data strategist interpreted the AI's results, fed these results to our creative team, and they chose to explore the iconography of Stephen King's books and use some of its key design elements. And this is the result. Did you guess it? Stranger Things. All we knew was this was an 80s sci-fi thriller. We used our trusty AI data pal to uncover that people into 80s teen movies were also passionate about Stephen King's books. And you can see from the progression of the book covers to the title design a meme effect result. We tapped into a cultural central nerve with massive viral results. And in addition to these attribution stats and headlines, Netflix attributed the runaway success of Stranger Things to an increase in 3.2 million subscribers that year and an uptick in stock price of 20%. This imagery was created by humans, but it was generated based on data supplied by an AI. It took a human to make this art, but it took data to lay out this canvas. The human looked at all the references the AI data showed us, and it made a decision to create a hand-drawn 80s sci-fi poster with Stephen King book cover font. This is an example of what I call data-hacked creative. Oh, and when I use the word hack, let's not get our hackles up. This isn't like a data stealing hack. This isn't an election tampering hack. This is a friendly, helpful hack, like a shortcut, like a biohack or a life hack, okay? We have a deal. No hackles, right? Because I'm going to use the word hack a lot. And the Stranger Things brief illustrates that by using AI tools to data hack our creative, we can design something that's entertaining and beautiful and impactful, but also something that people will find deeply meaningful without us having to ask them about it. We don't need to rely on focus groups. The audience is already telling us everything we need to know about them in real time. It's as if we've been hanging out with them for years. We know them so well, we don't even need to ask them what they want for their birthday. We just know. Now think about what that could do for your next experience build. If you can identify who you're creating the experience for, you can send the AI to hang out with them, come back and tell you what they really like, what they really care about. How could that change the design experience? How could that change the customer experience? And how could that change the success rate of your projects? And while the Stranger Things example is a branding exercise, the data-driven creative approach has huge impact for immersive experiences. So if you're a designer, an experience maker, a creative, basically anyone in the SATE orbit, you're going to care about this because now there are tools you can use to specify who your audience is, what they will respond to, and you can design according to that intelligence. Oh, and this is really important. A brand doesn't just mean a corporation that makes stuff, products, and services. It can be a destination, it can be a place, it can be an institution. The Grand Canyon is a brand. The Eiffel Tower is a brand, just as much as Walmart is a brand. So just like the word hack, hang with me when I use the B word, and I use it a lot. Oh, and one more thing about the B word. Our company sits inside of a branding and content agency. We're called Contend. And our division, Contend Immersive, we make multimedia live shows. We use a lot of different technologies: projection mapping, motion design, choreography, robotics, holograms, virtual mixed and augmented reality, and we combine them in really experimental, really audacious, and trippy ways. And I call the result inverted reality. We erase the line between the human and the digital, gravity and space, so that the spectator loses track of where reality begins and ends. And it's cool, right? Well, I mean, it is, but it also isn't. Our work is beautiful, and it's tech outrageous, But we were missing a mission-critical piece. Visually cool is one thing, but what's even more cool to me is lasting impact and measurable results. And I'll explain. I run an immersive design studio, and my conclusion is, yes, immersive experiences are beautiful, but they're also used inefficiently, mostly as shiny eye candy stunts that are very expensive and don't generate market-moving success or measurable business results, and often tend to be forgotten. And I know I might have just pissed some of you off. I was pissed off about that too. But I can say this with conviction because the immersive we built before we became data hackers was exactly that. Beautiful, expensive, and inefficient. I'll show you an example. At my prior company, we had over 80 people working on this super complex multimedia projection show, combining live score and Bolshoi ballet dancers, and it was a modern retelling of Swan Lake in 7 minutes, projected on the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. And it was jaw-droppingly beautiful. It was one of the most spectacular pieces of digital art I've ever seen. And for the several 100,000 people that saw it live, they felt the same way. People were literally crying. The city center was shut down. Traffic was stopped. But relative to the strong emotional reaction this got in the live moment, the show generated a pretty small digital footprint. If you look this show up online, it's got like 5,000 views on YouTube, maybe 100,000 views on Vimeo, and 10,000 shares on Facebook. So except for these small bits of organic user-generated content, this piece of art began and ended with the people who saw it live. And that is not to say that that isn't important, that art consumed live in the moment and the person-to-person experience isn't critical. It is. But imagine if we knew our audiences online were hanging out all over the world who like this kind of stuff, and there was a media plan to extend this beautiful show to millions of people who weren't there live, could never get there live, but would really care about it. And that media extension included a call to action, like, check this out, go to this, share this, talk about this. Or a call to, or an objective, like, what do we want our audience to think and say and do after they've seen this? And a quantifiable result, like how many of them did in the end what we wanted them to do. When we started to approach building immersive experiences from the perspective of how to create more beauty in the world and solve business challenges, we had this realization. Unless the complex and grand experiences we build can be tied back to a result, we're shortchanging the potential of the art we create, and we're being irresponsible to our clients. Everyone in this room creates spectacular, beautiful work, but can anyone in this room assure their clients that it will result in increased sales or a change somehow in their business? How can we guarantee a new form of ROI for our immersive experiences? Or in other words, ROE, a return on experience. And the answer is using AI to understand what matters to your audience. You can break apart the elements of a story and convert those elements into creative solutions that can help brands solve problems and help companies solve business challenges. Broken apart story elements are effective because they touch some very core things about what it means to be human. And when those core things are touched, they result in action. Hitting that cultural central nerve is what drives people to want to share and to consume and to adopt and to become and to learn. Remember how we went from 80s movies, to horror, to posters, to teen movies, to Stephen King's books, to the Stephen King title design, to the Stranger Things title design, to the explosive audience memeing and measurable business results for Netflix. That's an example of how we used a broken apart story ecosystem to unpack, repack, and deploy what will resonate. The definition of zeitgeist is spirit of the time. And the definition of a meme is a cultural item repeatedly transmitted. And I'm obsessed with vocabulary. I mean, I'm a vocabulary lunatic. And I could not find a word that exists in the English language to convey what an unpacked story ecosystem results in. So I made up my own, the Memegeist. And this is what the AI enables us to find. It leads us to strike the most resonant cultural nerve, the Memegeist. And the Memegeist results in results, period. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into audience data solutions you can use and the difference between tools that listen and tools that think. I'm sure you've heard of social listening and dabbled in some of the tools in the lower left, or your company uses them on a regular basis. Social listening tools mine social channels, and then they count and aggregate the mentions. And these tools give sort of a where people are and how many of them type of result. And some of these tools use algorithms to predict to generate predictive insights about what the audience might lean into based on spikes in their social chatter. For example, people are more inclined to like apple pie because they like apples. The tools that sit in the middle or skew higher to the upper right are where the special sauce is, because these are the tools that aggregate listening and predicting with thinking. For example, these tools can tell us people who like apples eat at these restaurants, shop in these stores, watch these TV shows, go to these movies, drive these cars, support these nonprofits, listen to these bands, wear these brands, and so on, exponentially. Thank you, exponential technology. AI insights are generated from a thinking machine with a human-like ability to extrapolate and to make connections and to infer and to intuit and to recommend. That's the special sauce, because that's where you can crack open meaning in your creative. So we have a tool that was created by our company called Contender. And you'll see it in the upper right. There are two other AI or thinking tools on the market right now, and I'm sure you've heard of them. Google Analytics, IBM Watson. Amazing tools. Neither were developed to be used for social intelligence, specifically for branding. These companies are just too big to care directly about that. But we're small, and that's all we care about, so our company made an AI tool specifically for branding, and that's how I got this extraordinary opportunity to play around with it for the past year. And I have lots of examples of different applicable results you can get with listening and thinking tools. So I'll give you a recent one. This summer, we were asked to design an immersive experience at the Salesforce annual convention, Dreamforce. None of us had ever been there and really had no idea what type of folks would dig going to a 3-day conference about enterprise organization software. So we definitely had to learn more about the attendees. So using a social listening tool, we learned this. Those that attend Dreamforce are 25 to 54-year-old business decision makers at medium and large enterprises. The audience skews male, married, and with kids. Okay, it's decent, but definitely doesn't tell us what these folks want for their birthday, and that's definitely what we need to know. Using an AI data tool gives us a raw data output that looks like this. And using our human data strategists to interpret it for our human creatives This is the kind of understanding we gather. Those that attend Dreamforce are millennial mindsetters with adult responsibilities. Okay, I love that. It's way more specific, way more relatable, poetic, exciting than 25 to 54-year-old male married with kids. They are creators, makers, entrepreneurs. They have wanderlust. They travel in packs. They value peer reviews. They heed commentary on blogs and social media. Aesthetics matter to them. Details count in all of their experiences. And tech on demand, like Lyft and DoorDash, is at the crux of their life. Now we're talking. Now we get these folks, and now we know how to talk to them. Now we know how to design for them. And then we can get even more specific. They're into esports. They're not into mainstream sports. They watch humorous political analysis like John Oliver, but they don't watch Jimmy Fallon. They watch Vice News. They don't watch network news. They watch Westworld, Game of Thrones, and The Walking Dead, but they don't watch any of the new Star Wars movies. Now, we have all this dig and don't dig information, and we can put our humans into interpreting these colorful data clusters and word clouds into inputs we feed our creatives. And then we can precisely hone in on what character and story and visual elements will make our creative the most relevant and impactful to Dreamforce attendees. That's how to nail a brief, even a VB. So SATers, change is coming to, and perhaps for, the creative process. A data-driven sea change is underway. And the process of building experiences is shifting from create and launch. Now we can build experiences leading with audience intelligence so that we can zero in on precision creative and high impact results. And when I tell creatives this, they say to me, that sounds horrifying. Get out of my face, shoo. AI is coming for my job. I'm going to be replaced by a machine. It's the singularity. What are you talking about? But from having this before and after AI experience, I can report it's been liberating for our staff and for our clients. So to the humans in this room, the process to touch hearts and minds is still very much human-powered. For example, it takes humans to discern what questions to even ask the AI. It takes humans to interpret the results. It takes humans to create beautiful, delightful manifestations of those results. We can use thinking machines to data hack our way to more meaningful and more impactful human experiences. My hope is, when you leave here today, you might think differently about technological intelligence and thinking machines as tools that don't undermine or replace our creativity, but as tools that can augment them. So let's become creative data hackers and futurists and more human all at the same time. Thank you. Sure.
So one of the joys, before we take a few questions, one of the joys of this for a segment chair is I get to read the brief. I get to read Amy's brief from 4 or 5 months ago, and then they send their draft PowerPoints or keynotes, and I obviously haven't seen the presentation, so I'm trying to put it together in my head, and it always surprises me. It's just, what a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
So we have a few minutes before we break for lunch, I think. So some questions for Amy about data hacking experiences. Okay. Microphones are on their way.
Okay. Hi, I'm
Hi.
Andrew. We've been I've been, as a part of the millennial meme generation, I'm super interested in the whole concept of the current meme, hello, fellow kids, which has come up a lot in things like the different political parties and how they're trying to relate to generations like me, and how quite often issues like that fail. You get into some really interesting concepts that then become memes themselves.
Yes.
Do you believe that this AI really combats that in productive ways for different organizations?
Can match it? Is that your question?
Well, can work on it, can improve it,
Yes.
can try to, okay.
Yes, I do. And that's a really good question because I'll give you the Dreamforce example. We as a creative team had a judgment about who we were talking to, and when we thought, enterprise organization software, like it's gonna be these really boring people that are like total engineering tech nerds, and it turns out they're not. They were, kind of people that I'd wanna hang out with. And so when we were able to mine all of their social conversations and understand what they care about, we were able to tailor the experience to communicate with them in a way that they would respond to. So yeah, I mean, you can apply that to all kinds of targeted audience initiatives, and I don't think it's the panacea by any means, but I think it can help narrow down from noise to signal what people will care about and be more receptive to, and not have that epic fail of like, yeah. Good question.
So I'm sitting here listening. I've always been a big fan of understanding your audience so that you know how to speak to them. So my question is, during your data hack on us, what have you learned?
So funny. Okay, so Dina, I don't know if you remember, I asked you, I was like, who goes to SATE? Tell me about them. They would not give me any information on you guys. They were very protective of your privacy and your security. So they just said, they're TEA members. Thanks. And some aren't. And so we didn't get to actually do a data dive on you guys, but I was thinking about it now that I've been here and I've kind of gotten a chance to interact with you, that it would be a really fun follow-up that we could maybe post on a blog afterwards to get a little more information. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Laura. I have a question. I loved how you are talking about how you use data to drive really successful business outcomes and to make your creative design more efficient, but also more impactful. I also loved when you said that, well, I guess what I got from you was we create incredible events that happen in our theme parks or wherever it is, museums, etc., and we make someone's day really happy. But I think as groups here, the tools we use are so impactful that we can actually even do more. We can really truly make the world a better place. So I think that's something where individually in what we do, we can look at how we engage the rest of the world aside from what we do for our day jobs and really help make the world a better place. This may sound like very altruistic and up there.
No, I want to do a cartwheel. Are you kidding me? That's amazing. You totally get it.
So I'm really intrigued by that, and I think a lot of people do come to us around the world, in other organizations to just ask, like, how can you help us solve, brutality against women? You guys are really great at creating, getting people to want to do things, and how can you help us make the world a better place? So I think that's a really great space for us all to get into. All right, so long story short, I'm intrigued by what did you do for the State Department?
I was a cultural ambassador for the US State Department across 2 administrations. And so I produced public diplomacy cultural exchange missions in 28 countries with bands, often in places that had never seen music from the West. I brought the first Western band to Nepal, Madagascar, and did a free concert in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. So definitely getting in the trenches and using art and music as a form of cross-cultural communication.
Hi, I'm Kevin, and so you talked a lot about having AI help you do this data mining of your audience. So let's say I'm doing an immersive theater show with 5 buddies of mine. What kind of tools would we be able to? Oh, you wanted this one. Okay,
I
good.
wanted this question, yes.
What kind of tools would you recommend that we use to get the same output? Woo!
Extra slides just for this question.
I'm so glad you asked this because I workshopped this talk on the post-production team at our company, and a lot of them are young filmmakers, and they asked me the same question. They were really intrigued, but they're like, okay, we can't afford to buy an enterprise solution from Crimson Hexagon for $35,000 a year. What can I do as an independent creative? And it's a wonderful question because it is really important to me to democratize this. And the most democratic free AI tool that exists is Google. And so, of course, I'm not going to tell you go Google something, but I am going to tell you that there's a way you can start to think like a data hacker with the free tools that exist. So for me, it's, when I use the Stranger Things example as what would we Google, the 80s? That means you're researching the what. And to think like a data hacker, you want to start to think about the why and the for who. So in a way, it's like, let's just workshop this really quickly together. Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve with this piece of theater that you want to build? Is there an area of the city that doesn't have enough art? Is there a hole in the market for this type of experience? Is there a point of view you have that is very important for this cultural time? You see, like, what's the problem you want to solve? No, I'm asking you. You could answer. Yeah. Okay. So then you want to ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish? And what is the tension we need to overcome? Are there too many theaters in this area? How do we cut through? Is the area that we're building this small theater in perhaps in an up-and-coming area where people don't go to the theater? So how do we convince them to spend money? You start to think about who you're making this piece of art for, and what their resistance might be, what their receptivity might be, where do you find them, how do you talk to them? So there's that. There's also a lot of audience tools on the market that do free trials, and some of them are very good, and I've tinkered with a bunch of them. So a lot of times if an enterprise solution isn't accessible or realistic, like you can do like a 3-month trial of one of these tools, get all the information you need for this one project, move on to another one, because this is such a new space that everyone is trying to sort of find their footing in what their utility is going to be in the market. So I hope that helps. There's one more slide here. It's got a lot of small text on it, but there's some ways you can think about who your audience is. What type of media publications are they sharing? What type of language and vernacular is used when they're talking about a similar subject to mine? What keywords are used in the context of this subject? What hashtags are used the most and why? What are some of the interests and characteristics of my audience? Meaning, what else are they talking about? What channels are they spending their time on? What, other than my subject of interest, are other interests and passions they have? How do they vary by geography and life stage? And these are all things you can find out on Google, the most democratized tool. So take a picture of that slide if you want to, or talk to me afterwards. Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so my name's Jacqueline, and so I have a background in some data analytics.
Thank God. Because I don't.
But I was just wondering if mine is more in the scientific, how would you get started in analyzing something how you did for Stranger Things? Like, what tools would you just start to use if it wasn't for a specific project, but actually the data part of it?
The data part of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say you want to find a tool that hits in the middle if you really want to get the spectrum of predictive listening, aggregation, and thinking. So like a NetBase, an Infogee, a Crimson Hexagon, and a Brandwatch all have free trials for non-enterprise users. And, you know, talking to my data analytics person at our parent company, we're owned by a really large experiential marketing agency, and they do a lot of consumer analysis. And he said something so wise to me. He said, there's a difference between reporting and analysis. And so you can get all the data in the world, and you can get these beautiful reports with these, you know, gorgeous word clouds, but what do they mean? How do they apply? Who's going to interpret them for you? And that's why I made the starter kit, because if you do start to harness data, these are questions you can ask then to start to extract your core message out of it.
Hi, way in the back.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
No, I'm in a shadow. It's okay.
Okay.
So using the Stranger Things example, when you were trying to mine down to the specific other elements that would really resonate with this particular audience, when you were trying to narrow that down to pick specifically Stephen King was something that resonated, I imagine there were probably other branches that were also very resonant with the particular audience you were looking for. Did you use the data more specifically to narrow to that one facet, or did you use the humans on your team to sort of narrow down and say, we're picking this one over the fact that they like this other thing, which is also relevant, but maybe not as relevant?
Great question. That was definitely a human data intersection moment. We did have a lot of other inputs. You know, like I said, the Goonies and Labyrinth was one too, you know, and to explore more of that. Iconography was a huge pop in that chatter. And what I can also do is make available the word cloud from that data dive if you're interested, and put it up on the blog. But this was one of our art directors that said, I've got the idea, right? So it's rad when you get the bright idea before you think about who you're talking to, but it's also rad when you get the bright idea because you kind of know a little bit about who you're talking to. So as soon as he saw Stephen King as a pop in the data feed, he put it together. They like posters, and they like Stephen King's books, and he immediately started researching all of those book titles and riffed on that for the main title theme. And, you know, so it really is just feeding the human creatives these sparks of inputs that are precise enough that we know the audience will care about them, but leaves room for them to work their magic. Cool. I love all these questions.
Okay. Over here. So, you know, this big data and analytics and marketing, this presentation, what I get from this is it is a very large cultural shift, specifically from what I'm used to. So in your experience, you know, I'm putting myself in the meeting room when this first came about, and I see the analytics guy saying the numbers don't lie, and I see the guy with 30 years experience saying, well, I've been in this industry for this long, and I'm telling you this won't work. So in your experience, what types of shifts, paradigms, changes, what had to happen within that workforce or within that talent pool for this to become a success?
clients contracting company after company to build very large, expensive experiences for them that don't move their business needle. Hence, the client doesn't meet their target. Hence, the client doesn't get their bonus. Hence, the client doesn't have a job. Yeah, I mean, there was just enough fail from, you know, and I think our example wasn't a fail, but I use it as something that could have been so much more impactful. You know, the shift is that I think the stakeholders that are contracting and funding, whether they're permanent, semi-permanent, pop-up immersive experiences, are realizing that there's a lot of them, and people are really good at building them. And in a way, as like a best-in-class creative, that's kind of a commodity unless you can differentiate yourself to say, not only can I make best-in-class creative, but I can help move the needle for your business in some way. I can help you solve a problem. I can help you reach this audience beyond your core audience. I can help you talk to people that may become brand ambassadors or brand evangelists for your message, whatever that is. I think there's just enough hunger out there for like more measurable results in addition to more beautiful experiences at the same time.
Hi, my name is Hope, and personally, as like a consumer and as a storyteller myself, I know that like story is really like important to me and to other people too. So how do you combine like the data that you get from searching and data mining and stuff like that, and two completely different things that you find, like using the Stranger Things example, like a movie like The Breakfast Club, and then Stephen King novels? How do you combine that to make a storyline without a specific brief, and then sell that storyline to your audience?
That's an amazing question. Okay, so I would say this is a good, I'll show you this. Sorry. What data can tell us, audience data, is a combination of this stuff, right? So when you get an audience intelligence, social intelligence feed, it's gonna give you affinities. It's like a 6 degrees of separation type of affinity. Like, we had one recently where we were trying to solve a business problem for Charles Schwab, and we found out that the Gilmore Girls were really, really important to Charles Schwab consumers from the data, right? So it's like things that are completely unrelated, but they're affinities, right? This audience is talking about this, but they're also talking about this. And then it gets you into their psychometrics and psychographics. And a layer down, it's going to get you into story graphics. So those are pathos, ethos, you know, the core story elements of what is the tone we need to speak in, what is the personality of this story and the story characteristics. Recall, what elements of other stories do people mirror back online when they're talking about it? Influence, meaning, are they messaging this out to influence others, or what other messages are influencing them? And just basic social metrics, like where are these people in various social channels? These are all things you can aggregate on your own from doing a very basic social intelligence data dive. And it does, I know it's hard to extrapolate in a story you're trying to make up right now, but it really, you start to see the connections and you're like, okay, banking, people in banking, it's really important to Gilmore Girls because of the life cycle story and the aging story and security and well-being, you know, and you start to make these connections on your own. That's where the human and the data, again, start to interact and the story forms.
Hi, I'm Darren. I've got a branding background and I've got an industrial design background, so I look at these things from different angles, and I'm trying to get my head around it. Like, I can see the positives, but I don't understand where the permission comes from on a lot of this data. So for instance, my own family. My wife uses what used to be my computer. My kids use what used to be my computer. So the searches, the data, what's being purchased using the machine, even my phone, what's being watched on the machine, it's all shared. And the aggregate of information and data that is being captured from the activities from just my device are across a bunch of different people, and not all of them are the decision makers. And so how can you be sure that the data you're capturing is not dirty in that way? And that it's predictive of actual truth. Like for instance, my kid sometimes likes to watch videos about things that he doesn't like and doesn't, but he wants to know about it.
Right.
My wife will look up things about people that she disagrees with just because she wants to understand it, but she doesn't want more of it. This is what she wants less of. So how does it figure that out? How does it like get the permission to the right data to create a success as opposed to missing the mark because it's using the wrong piece of data?
Well, there's a couple things. When you're doing a data analysis like this, you're aggregating basic social metrics of what channels they're on and potentially what age they are, but you're also putting in keyword searches. So then you look at the combination of the pops. So if a 15-year-old is researching retirement plans, you kind of start to get the sense of what we need to pay attention to, and when that moves across petabytes of data, and that's where the AI comes in, that it has this capacity, and it also gets smarter as the more queries you feed it. You can start to understand and see patterns, and that's why it does take a human to interpret it. But we get dirty data all the time, where it's just like, wait, this is not matching up at all. So then we realize we have to run other queries or other keywords, or it may be we get what we think is a really, really accurate picture of who we think the audience is, but the client might say either they're in complete denial or they just don't want to know, and they're like, that's not who we think our audience is, so we're not going down that road. So there's a lot of variables. This isn't a silver bullet. This is a tool in your toolkit. But I think to make statistically significant conclusions, it's because we're looking at enough volumetric data to see the patterns, not so much the specificity.
And so saying that it's not a silver bullet, do you have enough statistical data yet to say this really does work, or we got lucky this many times?
Well, it's a niche tool that's being used in a really unusual way, but we've done it with enough briefs for enough varying assignments at this point. We've used it for presentation assignments for Deloitte, to doing smart home technology solutions for Amazon, and how do they position Echo and Alexa, and to immersive experiences like building a Stranger Things themed escape room, and what element should be in that room that the audience will be really into in that moment. So it's working for us, for sure. I think it can work because I have evidence. I can't say I have data, but enough that I can stand on this stage with complete conviction and say, I know what the before was like and how inexact it was. And if I can get even a slight sense of precision and have some quantifiable results, then yeah, I do think it works.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amy. Fantastic.